Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Yankees Farm Report. Glad to be back after taking off a couple of weeks as the playoffs started. And to be honest, I was just a bit gassed. Needed the break. But I did want to thank all of you that did reach out to me to see how I was doing. I appreciate you guys. That said, we're going to do a review of the farm system, tell you what we saw, what went right, what went wrong, and what comes next. And as always, I always want to thank all the channel members who supported this channel. Thank you for your contribution. And I want to thank all the new members as well. Appreciate all of you. And that said, as you guys see, we have a big panel tonight. So let's get right into it. Right now that the season is over, and you want to kick it off, what grade would you give the farm system? And how do you feel about it currently? Start with Aaron.
Yeah, sure. I think it was definitely a really nice bounce back year. I think of it as a B plus, which is what Baseball America gave it, and just kind of comparing it around the league. I'm not saying we're probably in that 15 to 20 range overall in terms of true talent, but given that just in terms of the season we had, it was probably a top 10 year for all minor league systems. Detroit, probably Boston, or two teams that stick out that probably had two of the best seasons. But there was a lot to like for us. There was huge leaps in the pitching side, the hitting side, although it didn't, wasn't as good. It was still a lot of good bats that came, and that was really useful at the deadline because that's basically how they made a lot of those trades. I mean, Rafael Flores, Rock Riggio, Jesus Rodriguez, all guys that performed well this year, and now they're gone. And you know, we'll see what the pieces do. This October and beyond. But I'm very happy with the way this season turned out.
Yeah, if the only thing I think keeps it from being a solid A is maybe their top prospects have some question marks at the end of the season. But what do you want a farm system to do? Provide the major league team with help, check. Uh, have prospects available to trade at the deadline, check. Develop guys out of the draft, check. Have guys come off the radar and become prospects, check. And you had teams win. You had two teams in the playoffs. So I think B plus is a really accurate grade, and like I said, you could argue that it's an A, except if you would feel better if you had no doubts about their top prospects, and maybe there's more question marks, and maybe they're a little thin at the top of the system too.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a B plus is right where it is. I mean, you saw big leaps this year from George Lombard Jr. When Spencer Jones did well on the hitting side. I mean, you did had a little bit of regression, or not little bit of, but a really bad year for Roger Arias, unfortunately for him. And a lot of us I've talked about him all year long. I mean, this was the year I thought he was going to have a breakout year, but it wasn't in the cards. Um, Dax Kirby, draft pick right there. I mean, he kind of he showed out in low A ball as well, so it's something to look forward to at shortstop as well, which we're kind of beginning to restack that position. Used a lot of talent in the catching position and then in trades, excuse me. But the calling card right now for this farm system is going to be the pitching. And we got some kids there that one he made to the big leagues in Will Warren, in Cam Schlittler, and then it's just not them, but then you have more coming. You have ERC coming, you got Lagrange coming, you got a lot of other guys that are in the works, in the conversations, either to be playing for this team or going to be used for chips later on in this offseason in the next trade deadline. So, Marcus, as you said, they checked off all the boxes. Um, yeah, I'd like to see a clear cut number one guy, and I think next season I think that's going to be George Lombard Jr. because overall in the big leagues it's going to be a big year for both him and the guy ahead of him in Anthony Volpe, because those whatever those two do is going to be the next, say, 4 or 5 years for the Yankee shortstop.
Let me go ahead. Personally, I give the farm system an A minus, and let me explain. And I think this is a massive middle finger to the Yankees don't develop players crowd. This season, we saw a lineup that at some points had 5 or 6 homegrown bats in it. Right, we saw a rotation that had 4 legit homegrown starting pitchers in Schmidt, Will Warren, Lee Heel, Cam Schlittler at the end there. And by the way, I thought Cam had looked amazing at the major league level, and he looks like he could be a bright spot for the Yankees for some time. And right behind him, you have ERC, you have Carlos Lagrange. Remember, you have Chase Hampton coming back next season as well. Ben Hess, Bryce Cunningham are also in the pipeline, and they could all be knocking on the door next season for a debut, depending on how things break. And the system still has Spencer Jones, who had valleys and peaks, and some of those peaks were very high, and unfortunately, so were the valleys. You had Brendan Jones, who looked really good at times, especially towards the end there. And the system did have five prospects who did make top 100 list from Pipeline or Baseball America. And lastly, as piggybacking off of what Aaron said, you think about the 15 or so prospects that the Yankees were able to trade for pieces or for players on this team that did change the dynamic of this team, right? And they didn't have to touch any of their really nine solid guys, which is something Nick has harped on since the trade deadline. So kudos to Cashman for what he did at the trade deadline. I think I'm pretty happy with everything, sans the Rock Riggio, maybe the Griffin Herring trade, but I think all the other moves panned out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll finish it off. I feel like you guys all touched it up perfect. I would take a little bit of everything that everybody here said. I think the only part that I would add there is that, you know, I think there are players that also got shorted that would have probably been top 100 prospects, like Bryce Cunningham before he got injured, was on that
Hmm.
trajectory to possibly be a top 100 prospect. That would have pushed it for a solid A for me as well, because just would have been another guy. They sent him to the Arizona Fall League. We'll see what's going to happen with him there. But I think you guys all hit on the head from the drafting Dax Kilby, who's looked great in his
Yeah, you're talking
small
about
sample
top
size.
100 prospects, and that's a guy who I think could be one.
Yeah.
When these organizations redo their lists, either they do them. I don't know if they do them at complete year end or if they just wait till the start of next year. But he can definitely be a top 100 potentially.
Right. And the same thing, like I said, we have LeGrande. Schlittler came up and dominated. Probably going to be one of your top three starters in a postseason rotation. So, I mean, you really can't be anything but happy with what the organization did compared to last year with the bounce back.
And regarding the farm system, I mean, I know a lot of people were down on the system, but I had said from the beginning, like there was a lot of injuries last season. You had I think every player in the top 10 besides Roderick Arias spent time on the IL, which affected the system overall. But I mean, if you look at what they did this year, like I said, they had about five or six homegrown bats in that lineup, four guys in the starting rotation. They graduated Jason Dominguez, Will Warren, and Cam Schlittler. uh, I mean, you got to give your props to the farm system. They
Well,
done exactly what they're supposed to do.
you're also going to have at least three off the top of my head guys who developed in their system get Rookie of the Year votes with other teams, and Durbin Ramirez and Narvaez. So,
Hmm.
and I know they're not with the Yankees, but that's farm system products right there.
Mhm. We pretty much touched on the farm system, the top or the guys that graduate. I just mentioned them, the top 100 prospects. So, who would you guys say was your MVP or your best player in the farm system this year?
Oh,
Yeah, I'll start
I
this
don't
one
mind
off.
starting again. Oh, you're gonna start this off? Oh, you got it.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna take, in my opinion, man, ERC. I just feel like what you got from him, coming over for that trade, Narvaez kind of jumped off, but he held his own, man. And not only did he hold his own, I feel like he was the most impressive pitcher all year for the Yankees, and probably number two in the minors behind Jonathan from the Mets. So I've been extremely impressed with what they got. And a lot of people also don't know that they also added two other kids because of that trade. So it was really a 3-for-1 trade uh, for him. But out of everybody, I would probably say ERC would have to be my MVP for the Yankees minors this year.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's a great, that's also like my number one guy. And I just to add on to that, the MLB released their minor league pitcher of the year, awards. And if I remember correctly, the top three are Peyton Tolley, either Tong or Nolan McLean, and Griffin Herring actually, which I mean, he was great once he left and went to Colorado system. But I was a little surprised ERC wasn't one of the top three nominees for that award, given that he led the minor leagues in strikeouts and was just, so good at both levels, and only gave up three home runs all year. So yeah, yeah, I definitely agree that it's, it's part of it is just because, a lot of hitters left the system and, the top guys, whether Spencer Jones having missed time with injury or underperforming and George Lombard, not really, breaking out as much as we wanted to see. It definitely leaned into a pitcher heavier year, but he was just so good.
And I think he's the best pitcher and had the best pitching season. I'm going to go off the radar a little bit and say Dylan Lewis is my MVP. Going from a guy who I thought was a good athlete that might run into some home runs to a guy who I think looks like a hitter now,
Mhm.
who can do a little bit of everything. Yeah, the numbers were there, and this is a legitimate prospect and arguably a top 10 prospect in the system. So to me, that's a huge win and a huge year from him. And I'm hoping that that continues at Double A next year.
Me, I'm going with Spencer Jones. I mean, I know, like I said earlier before, there were valleys and peaks, but when he was on, he was on. I know towards the end of the season there, he looked like he was crashing. I'm chalking that up to the injury and the fact that he most likely wasn't 100% ready to come back, because he completely looked like a totally different player. But if you still look at the numbers overall, it was a very, very good season for Spencer Jones. And if you're looking at as far as for me, the pitcher in the system, I'm going with Elmer Rodriguez as well. I did like what Carlos Lagrange did. I almost gave it to him, but you can't ignore what Elmer did this season.
Yeah,
Well,
I just want to
I
circle.
like what Elmer did a lot. Sorry, Aaron, you go first.
Oh no, you got it. I was going to change the subject slightly, so you finish off.
Thank you. You can't deny what Elmer did, but I like. But going back to you, Carlos, my guy was Lagrange. I think where he was and what
Hmm.
he is showing now
Yeah.
is two different pitchers. We're talking at a number two guy in the lineup, possibly in the starting rotation, possibly a number one, or possibly a setup guy, a closer. I mean, he has a lot of avenues to go down. He was pumping fastballs. I mean, he's throwing out 100 and he's holding the 100 into the fifth inning, which is something for younger pitchers that you kind of hope to see, and now you're seeing that from him. The control issues was something that was a big knock on him for a couple of years, and he's showing that he actually has command of his pitches now. That's a big plus, and he's doing it in Double A, which, as everyone knows, is the make or break division for any player trying to make it to the big leagues.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to Spencer Jones because it seemed like we are going into our Cy Young conversation. And just, I think going into the season, the big questions were, was he a legitimate prospect? Does he have any prospect value remaining? And yes, while there were some valleys, especially that August, like you mentioned, Carlos, I think we more than saw him return that value that everyone thought. I mean, Baseball America pushed him back to a top 100 prospect, and they were writing articles throughout those first few months of the season where they were kind of, putting some water on him, and they couldn't even deny it any longer. So, that last month definitely put some, cold water on him starting the season with, with the pro team. Like there were a lot of tweets I saw about that around the trade deadline time,
Mhm.
um, but he for sure showed that he can not only he has talent to be an MLB player, but he could be a dangerous weapon if he can get that zone contact fixed again. But I totally understand why he would get MVP. For me, it was just, yeah, just a little too much inconsistency, but it definitely was really good to see him do what he did.
Valid. Nick, who was your pitcher of the year? Did you mention?
Yeah, I'm the same guy. I probably went with MP, man. It's definitely ERC.
Mm,
But if I was gonna change it up, a guy that probably didn't get no love here that I feel like really came on second half big time was Ben Hess.
I knew
I mean that. I
it.
mean he just did. He just came on, and to me, I know we were talking about at the trade deadline. Like I just feel like, man, when there's a name associated with something, like you can feel it. Even if he comes out the bullpen, you got like the Hess gas station coming out there. There's just a story that could be made with him. And I feel like for that reason too, like he's marketable. So the Yankees are gonna like that as well. And he impressed, man. He went to Double A. He looked good there. So I'm excited to see what he does next year.
You want your number one pick to look like a number one pick, and that's what he went out.
Absolutely.
He went out and did that this year.
And also just, a lot of I would say the higher rated guy coming into the season was the second round pick, Bryce Cunningham. And to be fair, I think and Cunningham might have even got a slightly bigger bonus.
Mhm.
But yeah, Ben Hess was, maybe being not written off, but, overlooked. And I mean, obviously Cunningham's injuries played a part, but Hess really, what he did in the second half impressed me more than anything Cunningham did during his time healthy in that first month plus of the season. So, kudos to him for kind of correcting the ship and starting to throw a lot more strikes. And that fastball is a weapon, even if it isn't 100 miles per hour like Carlos Legrand Hayes. He is that. The curveball plays really well. It's a very very encouraging season from him.
Mm. All right, moving back into the rookie leagues. Who would you guys say is your player of the year in the rookie leagues? So I'll go first. For me, it
Yeah,
was, or you go ahead, Aaron.
yeah, it's tough. There's five of us and no one wants to speak.
Oh my God.
No, I think kind of the obvious choice in my mind is Richard Matique. Um, there was it was a really good year for the Dominican Summer League. A lot of guys, especially the bats, performed well. But when you're talking about a guy who was, producing a lot of power, making a lot of contact, especially improving on what he did the prior year.
Hmm.
I think it finished the top 10 WRC plus in all of the DSL, maybe even higher. He was, he I think cemented himself as a top 30 prospect in the system. And as someone who rates prospects and has my own lists, and I find it hard to really know how to value those DSL guys just because the information isn't as readily available. But um, from what I could see, and then looking at the stats, it's he does have the looks of someone who could be a really good hitter. So yeah, I think that's my choice for MVP.
Yeah, I'm going to double up on that. I also went with Rich Matique. The numbers look tremendous coming from last season. Strikeout to walk rate was almost 1 to 1. I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, I think he walked just two. It was like a negative 2 to strikeouts. It was like 41 to 43, I think, or something like that, but a tremendous jump, especially in the power numbers, the contact numbers. He just looked like a completely different player. And I mentioned it to one of the Yankee front office guys, and he told me, you got to remember, last year he was essentially a sophomore in high school. He would have been a sophomore in high school. So, with a little bit more experience, yeah, there's more confidence, and the numbers speak to that.
Shout out to Juan Torres too, who has really good numbers, but we might not know as much about him. But throwing himself on the radar, I think that's a really good year for him.
Me to
Nick?
go? Yeah, I'll take over. I'm gonna switch it up. And I'm gonna go with Jose M. Rodriguez. I know he got up to A ball, but when he was in the FCL, man, he absolutely just dominated there. And when you were telling me he started hitting 98, 99 miles an hour, coming off that injury, I mean that's just super impressive for a young pitcher that has potential. So I'm excited to see what he continues to do as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with what Aaron and Carl said with Matique. I mean, he wasn't the big name when he got signed, but he's he's young enough and he's finding his way, and and he's showing the talent that earned him, of I think he was what, 600 $750,000 signed or something, like, or maybe
Yeah,
1.1.
I think overall he was the third highest
Yeah.
signing last year.
Yeah, so I mean, he's good enough to do it, and especially he's doing it. He's not a shortstop; he's playing third base, so he's gonna be a bigger kid. They're projecting him to be a bigger kid. He's gonna put on more muscle. He's gonna put on, he's gonna add a lot of strength and hopefully some versatility at that spot. So, the power numbers are gonna be there, and just you want to see him continue on, and hopefully this next year he's over in the FCL. We'll really start seeing how he reacts stateside, and making that's going to be the big jump for him. And then as he continues to move forward, but that's what I'm looking forward to next year.
I'm gonna go one other thing. I just want to give a shout out to Brandon Maia. I mean, before his injury, he was on a very, very good trajectory. All the powers number looked good. The average was even better. He looked like the guy that we were all expecting up until he had that injury. Next year, I'm expecting him to start with Tampa. He's spent two seasons already in the FCL, so he should be in Tampa starting next season. Moving on to my pitcher of the year, I also went with Jose M. Rodriguez. To me, he came out of nowhere because I didn't really notice him. He wasn't on my radar the season prior or to the one that he lost, but comes back fire 97, 98 miles an hour. If I'm not mistaken, I think he won two pitchers of the month at the FCL, or maybe it was a pitcher of the month and a pitcher of the week, but he looked tremendous. Looking forward to see what he does with Tampa.
No argument there. And shout out to Omar Gonzalez, who I've liked since they signed him. I thought he had a really good year, and I think maybe we are starting to see him become a starter. I was a little worried about the innings that he had thrown or the lack of innings he had thrown coming into the year, but he was taking his turns by the end of it, and I'm hoping that next year, maybe we see him in Tampa, but
Mhm.
that remains to be seen.
Um, who would you guys? Who are some of your biggest surprises this season?
Well,
You know,
my
I
biggest surprise was going to be was Roderick, to be honest with you, but not in the positive way, in the negative way. Um, I thought, like I said earlier, I thought he was going to have a breakout year this year. His position was his to lose in low A ball, and I was hoping that he was going to get off to a good start. So the minute that Lombard went up to Double A, he was going to. The idea would have been to have him push up to high A ball, and it didn't happen this year. And now you're kind of looking at him going, what's the next step? Is it going to be, is he going to are they going to have him give up the right-handed swing? Are they going to start looking at moving him around a little bit? Maybe third base is the spot for him. Are we going to turn around and put him lower in the lineup now because it doesn't seem like he can handle the pressure? Or are they just going to move him up to high A ball? Say, listen, you've outstayed your welcome in low A ball. A change of scenery is going to be good, might be good for you, and he might explode by going up to Hudson Valley. A lot of question marks for him, though. At ending the season, going into next season, and that's my biggest surprise.
I'll change it to a positive note. I wasn't sure whether to put this guy in surprise or breakout, but honestly, given what he did those last few starts, I think he already broke out. That's Xavier Rivas. This was a kid drafted in the 16th round out of Ole Miss, was coming back from Tommy John. And, we saw some bright spots when he was in Complex League, getting those first innings under his belt. Then when he was in Tampa, he was okay, but the control definitely really wasn't there, and he just wasn't seemingly the most effective pitcher. But the Yankees must have liked the underlying because they called him up to Hudson Valley, and he was amazing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I believe he threw 30 innings in at the level, and he had a near 40% strikeout rate, which is bonkers. I mean, it was yeah, 29 innings and a 38.9% strikeout rate. And what that reminds me of is a former Hudson Valley Renegade who in Chase Hampton, who in his first, let me see, he had 47 innings, but he had a 40.5% in his first season in Hudson Valley, and that got him on the radar to a top 100 prospect before that promotion to Double A. Rivas looked incredible. The fastball control, especially, was really iffy at times. That's something that usually comes last with coming back from Tommy John, but that slider and changeup combination is deadly, especially the changeup. The changeup's a plus going on double plus pitch. So, we talk about the Yankees pitching depth and those top end guys in Cunningham and Hess and ERC and LeGrand Hay. I think Rivas is about to join them, if not already joining them.
My biggest surprise guys are already gone. So Parks Harbor and Marshall Toole. But they both give me hope because Parks Harbor was an undrafted free agent and Toole was a draft pick a little bit down the draft. And the Yankees are starting to show quite a bit of success with both of those demographics. So now guys who I used to not pay attention to or have very little hope for, I find them all interesting because they're picking up guys from places where they used to not pick them up. And for the two guys I mentioned, there's no reason now watching Parks Harbor that he won't hit, which is remarkable. And Marshall Toole, unfortunately, I thought he was safe, and the Rays picked him up on a player to be named later. So the stolen base total for him and the fact that he just kept hitting, we might be hearing both of those names a little bit more, unfortunately, with the wrong organizations.
I mean, realistically, I mean, there's a couple of choices you could pick, but how can it not be anybody not named Carlos Legrand? I mean, realistically, man, at the end of the day, this guy last year we were talking about can he even find the strike zone, came back this year and literally looked like a number one and shot himself up to a top 100 prospect. He was in the lower 20s in most of the rankings. So at the end of the day, if anybody impressed the most, it's got to be him. So my breakout's got to be LeGrand, and there's nobody else that's going to top that list for the Yankees this year. I
Mhm.
mean that did wonders this year for the Yankees was LeGrand.
Yeah, my that was gonna be my pick, also Carlos Lagrange. But I did want to mention a couple other guys. For me, I really liked what I saw from Tony Rossi. Came out of nowhere. Could have been at Double A this year. Maybe it was politics the reason why he didn't get there, but he looks like a very promising find for the Yankees. Another guy I wanted to mention was Bryce Warrecker. He looked absolutely phenomenal coming out of the bullpen this season. He looked like a complete weapon. I thought he should have been at Somerset by the midseason. Yankees kept him at Hudson Valley all season long, but he looked absolutely amazing, and definitely one of my biggest surprises was the jump in the velo for Cam Schlittler and holding it
Mhm.
consistently at 100. Um, I mean, I know if I remember correctly, at Somerset he was touching 98 a few times, and when he got to the major league level, he was just triple digits consistently.
Mhm. And I just want to, before we move on, I want to take this moment to talk about not a surprise as a player, but just maybe an overall trend. But because there's been a lot of them named, this 2024 draft in UDFA class. I mean, we've talked about a lot of these guys: Ben Hess, Bryce Cunningham, the first and second overall picks. Cunningham obviously had injuries, but both were great when they pitched. Gage Zeal and Griffin Herring both had solid seasons. Griffin Herring had a really good season and were a part of trades to help make this team better. We don't need to talk about who they were acquired for. That's a different conversation. But then going into later rounds, Brendan Jones was a 12th rounder who looks like he could definitely be at least a fourth outfield type. Brett Gardner, pesky guy on the base path who has some pull power. Dylan Lewis looks like he could, if he continues this trend and how he's proceeding, he could be a top 100 prospect in my mind. Marshall Toole was great and helped us get Jose Caballero, Xavier Rivas, as I mentioned. Brandon Decker was a solid pitcher in low A and for high A. Then yeah, Rossi, Parks Harbor. I mean, those are the two UDFAs that really stick out to me. Um, but yeah, I mean that was what 10 guys at least I rolled off there, and another promising guy, Mac Estrada, and as well as our third and seventh round picks and Thatcher Hurd and Wyatt Parliament. They haven't even debuted. They had injuries, and Thatcher Hurd especially could be a really nice piece. So just tremendous production from this draft class right out the gate, and that's a big testament to Damon Oppenheimer and his team because that just fueled this resurgence in the farm system this year.
I mean, and to piggyback off that, I think you also need in the IFA class as well, right? Look at what they did this season. You have um, Richard Matique,
Steven.
Alexander Almonte, Steven Mariñez. There was a few guys that this team this season looked a lot better than it did in the last maybe 2 years. And moving on to that, or piggybacking right for that, which players do you think progressed, or who look like they've progressed and are ready to turn the corner? I'm just gonna come right out and say it. Besides Bryce Warrecker, I think Juan Matheus is a guy that doesn't get mentioned a lot, and the guy just hits no matter where he's at.
Starting to look the part too. I watch him play live. It's a guy who plays with some swagger. He's got some confidence for being a smaller guy. There's just a look about him where he looks like a ball player when you go see him. And I know that's not worth much. And if it's not in the stat sheet, then it's not going to get noticed. But Like there's something there.
I mean, I just, if we're talking about guys ready for the next level, I think Dax Kilby in 18 games in Tampa showed more than enough to go up to high A. He was great. Showed everything you want. Baseball America named him the top debutant from the 2025 draft class for the minor league season. Obviously small sample, but he's been everything you want and more out of a first round pick so far. And yeah, he should be
Yeah,
in Hudson
definitely,
Valley to
man.
start next year.
I can't wait to see a full season from him.
Hmm.
Um, I always hate this topic, man. I just do. Um, Mark already kicked it off. Who's your biggest disappointment? I mean, there's probably gonna be consensus on this.
I already laid my case out there where so everyone else can go.
I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna come on and say it. It's Roderick. I hate to say it, man. I'm a big Roderick fan. I'm hoping that whatever he found at the end of last season from July on, where he hit nearly 280 and he looked like a completely different player. It's there. I hope he just finds it again.
and I'm this probably isn't going to go over very well, but the whole international group seems to have lagged in comparison to the domestic group. And I'm not trying to bag on guys who have a really, really difficult job of scouting kids that are 12 years old and trying to figure out what they're going to be when they're 16, 18, 24. But it's just we've gone through a few years with no breakthrough, right? So even our top guys, our top dollar guys have lagged. Maya got hurt, Viorio still, Monty Cedeno only 16. You got to give some breathing room there. Peralta comes up domestically and struggles. There's a lot of leeway you have to give these people, but it just feels like we're talking about all these draft wins and these undrafted free agents who have taken steps forward, and you're hoping for that other group to come along. So that side of things could use a win or two here in the short term.
In regards to that, let me just chime in on that real quick. I mean, it's almost the same thing as on a stateside, right? Because you have had pitchers that have come out from that, right? You have Carlos Lagrange, Henry Delane, who unfortunately has been injured. You have other guys, Javier Marte. So there are development wins there, but it's just the offensive side of things is lagging a bit, just like stateside.
And for the pitching thing, there's always that caveat that guys are just going to get hurt every year. You don't know who they're going to be. So you almost judge them differently. But yeah, it's the hitting side of things. There's all kinds of tools there that just haven't translated yet.
But my
I'll,
question always comes down to with that side is why, because the Yankees have some of these kids in their system or in development for a few years before they are officially signed. So I'm always I always wonder why the international side. I would always think the international side that the Yankees would have them in doing certain things that would help them progress faster. It seems like they are falling behind a lot faster than actually moving forward. And I can't, and in my brain, I can't put two and two together to figure out why that's happening.
I mean, I wonder if it's maybe some of the scouting. It's you can say, oh yeah, can set these players in whatever, do whatever they want. And obviously, they have a very good I can't think of the right word for it, but school down there, especially compared to other teams. But sometimes if you're just, it's hard to scout guys that young. But if you're not doing a good enough job scouting, and sure there might be reasons to like some of these guys, but as they just mature and they just don't have it. Not to say that's the only th issue here, but it's definitely something to take into account. Is are you doing the best job scouting these guys?
And I think Nick and Carlos can weigh in on this. When they've pushed their chips maybe in the wrong direction a few times here the last few years, where guys like I watched Basayo hit a home run against the Yankees and think, we got Hans Montero. No offense, Hans, but those kind of decisions that I'm not privy to, but maybe you guys can weigh in. Like maybe the choices that they made, they could have made better choices had they stuck with some of those deals they had in the first place.
Oh, man. All
Hey,
right,
Nick,
you bring.
Kevin DeFrank looks
Yeah,
really good, huh?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we know some more information, man. All right, so I'll just start spitting it, man. So the Yankees team didn't pass Kevin DeFrank because of a medical injury. Um, So three Dodgers didn't sign off on his paperwork. They tried to push it through, man, and it got flagged every time. So that's why Kevin DeFrank's not a Yankee. Um, but it's tough because you go and look at baseball,
By the way,
MLB.
they did offer him the most money.
Yeah, we offered him 1 million. So, but if you look at MLB.com's rankings, man, the Yankees have two guys on that list and actually had two top 10 guys, including Yes and Norton, and then lost them to the Angels over, some politics and money on top of that. So I feel like the Yankees actually, in my opinion, is they actually do a very good job of scouting early, but they don't understand how to balance a checkbook. Because if you look at it, we had I'll use 29 for example. We have
Yeah,
Angel Garcia and we had Daniel De La Rosa. We just lost Daniel De La Rosa to the Tampa Bay Rays, where he was getting 3.9 from the Yankees, and then they just shot up and gave him 6.2 million.
the Rays.
Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, the Rays. So, which I don't know how they're going to make that work either, because they also got Norky Sanchez signed for over 3 million and 29 too. But then we also lost Braston Basker, who we had alongside uh
That move never
Albert
made sense to
Mejias.
me. That move never made sense to me. That move, the math wasn't mathing for me because if you have one player at 6 million and the other player at 5 million, how are you gonna make that happen? The
Right.
pool
But
starts at about seven.
that's the thing. So the Yankees, at the end of the day, you try to figure out what you're doing, and I feel like a lot of times, man, that their checkbook game is not that good. But that's where you end up losing certain players. So this time they chose right because they could have kept Yes and Norton, but they kept Juan Diaz for the
Mhm.
upcoming year. But I want to kind of go back to that question because I know everybody's going to say Roger Arias, and that's fair, 100%. Roger Arias was, but to me, I'm going to say the biggest disappointment is an international guy who actually looked really good, but I think that we have to really start having a conversation with Brando Maea, because the best ability, period, is availability. And the guy is never healthy anymore. And you could say injuries, this, that, but every single season he's played in, he hasn't been healthy. So at what point do we
Mhm.
say, can this guy's body even hold up over 20 or 30 games in the rookie leagues? Mind you, 162 over an MLB season. So, as much as I like Maya and the talents there, the question is, can he ever stay healthy enough to be something?
Yeah, because
I
that
think that's a
development,
bigger disappointment.
that clock
Mhm.
is ticking, and those are at bats he's not getting and innings he's not playing. I think that matters, and that's a fair thing to bring up.
Yeah, and I'll also say add on to that, you're injury prone till you're not. That was kind of the whole Aaron Judge. Oh, Aaron Judge is injury prone, and then
Yep.
he's played a ton of games over the last 4 years. But even into the prospect status, Carlos Legrand felt like he was pretty often injured, and then he was finally healthy, and when he was healthy, he took off. Now, that's not saying same thing's gonna happen with Maeda, but yeah, I understand what you're getting at. I don't want to say it's fair to write him off necessarily, but it's fair to maybe douse expectations with him until we can see him on the field for an extended period of time.
So which of these players are you guys expecting to bounce back next season? Players who are coming back from injury or who lost significant playing time this year?
I'm gonna take a shot. Well, coming off an injury,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, all right. So I got two. So I want to see if Lalane regains his fastball velocity, because if
Hmm.
he does that, then in my opinion, it's him. But the guy who I think is going to jump back and really open a lot of eyes that people don't really talk about is Angel Benitez. I know we've talked and
Mm.
he's been saying that he's hitting 102, 103 on his fastball. So is that another situation where the control was already better than Legrand? So does he come back now and dominate and take off like he was a part of those big three-headed monsters when they were in the DSL?
But
So that would be my guy.
the same thing, the same thing fits for him, right? Can't stay on the field.
Right. No, I don't disagree. That's why we're not having a conversation about him being in the top 30. Because truthfully, the talent is top 100 prospect. Same
Yeah,
thing with Brandon
when he
Maya.
has been on the field, he's looked amazing.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll give, just two injury guys. We kind of touched on them earlier, but Thatcher Hurd and Chase Hampton. Hampton was a former top 100 prospect. Um, and now that he's fully undergone Tommy John, just seeing what he comes back like next year could be, like we said, we already talked about this great top of the farm system pitching wise we have. If he can return even like 85% of the pitcher he was his first year, that's a huge boon. And then Thatcher Hurd, kind of like I mentioned, he's a guy I really like. He has three plus pitches. It's just about his command. Um, but he could, easily be a top 100 prospect and a top five pitching prospect in the system if he, returns, comes back healthy and looking good like I know he can. And then just one bounce back, a guy who didn't perform this well. I'm gonna go Manny Cedeno. He was basically playing the whole year as a 16-year-old, and we saw some late flashes of some power late in the year. And it's he struck out a lot, but it wasn't because he was swinging at garbage. He just wasn't swinging, which is I think that's a little bit more fixable than toning it down at times. So I think he's someone I could see another year matured and really kind of finding their groove. We talked about needing our top IFA guys to do better. Even though the rest of the class had a really good year, he was definitely lagging behind there. But I could see next year being, him showing that he's kind of bucking this trend of underperforming IFAs,
Yeah,
top IFAs, I want to say.
I'm gonna go with Bryce Cunningham. Maybe that it's not so much of a bounce back, but his season was so often interrupted. And I know he's
Mm.
gonna pitch in the fall league here, but I feel like next year, out of all the guys we're talking about, and I agree if Lalane's velocity comes back, he's up in that upper echelon, but Cunningham takes his place up there too, with the LeGrand Hayes and the ERCs and the Ben Hesses that we talked about before.
The thing with Alane, I watched his final start of the season. He was playing against the Clearwater Thrashers, and I was at the stadium. I was watching, and it wasn't the fastball velocity; it was the command. And he was his start was very frustrating because he was frustrated as well. He couldn't get the pitches. He wasn't getting anything over. I don't know if it was fatigue at this point for him, or if it was just he didn't have it that day. But he didn't look right the entire his entire outing. And you couple that with the fastball command, with the fastball velocity coming back, that screams to me like this offseason, like he might be staying. He should stay in Tampa and work at the gas station and try to work with everyone about his pitch forms, his pitch shapes, and getting that and building his body back up to being a starting pitcher. Because after that, what he's going to be he, in the conversation that possibly after next year of relief pitching only. If he can't go the distance, then two inning. He's a 2 inning guy. Maybe he comes in the seventh or eighth inning or something like that.
Is he Rule 5 eligible this winter?
I believe so.
He is.
Do you think he's in a position now where you don't have to protect him?
Yeah.
No, a team's not gonna take him yet.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I also went with Henry Lalane. I mean, hopefully, full off season, he'll get his velo back up to, 97, 98. Another guy that I was hoping would have a good bounce back would be Brock Selvich to be completely healthy. I would love to see that, and I'm hoping for that.
He's in
Um,
that. He's bumping up against the ceiling now, I think. So next year's a big year for him.
and that said, so which players are you guys expecting to surprise and break out in 26?
I just said it, man. So I'm just gonna touch the guy up again. I think Angel Benitez is one of them. I think, like I said, we've been hearing the stuff that we're hearing, and he sounds like he's gonna be fully healthy going into next season. So I expect him to actually jump up there and push maybe two or three levels and get up to at least a high A ball or maybe even double A if we get lucky to see that for that one. But I'm gonna also throw another name out there. I'm gonna go Francisco Velorio. Because
Mm.
he actually really didn't have a terrible year this year. The
Mhm.
power just didn't show up this year.
Yeah.
But he hit way better. His strikeout numbers came down. So I'm expecting Velorio to go up to the FCL and hopefully put together a good season, man. So that's gonna be the two players that I'm gonna say.
It wasn't also just to clarify, it wasn't even just, I mean, the raw power was there. His exit velocities were well in the hundreds. I think his 90th percentile was like 103, I believe. And so he just needs to, it just wasn't hitting the ball and hard in the air enough. So it's, the raw stuff is really there. So yeah, I like that pick. My picks, I'd like to see, one is Alan Facundo. He had 30 really nice innings. Um, 30 really nice innings pitched in 2024 for Tampa. went out with Tommy John, came back this summer, pitched another really nice 30 innings. His control is definitely spotty, but his slider, fastball, sinker make for a really nice combination. Hopefully he'll start the year in Hudson Valley. I could see him taking a big jump. And then another guy, I'm going to go with the 2025 draft class pick. Jack Siebert, we saw like I think it was 5 innings out of him in
Yeah.
Hudson Valley. He was purely a reliever, but just if you watch him, he is an extreme supinator. And if I saw some overlay of his pitches. It's just they're both in the same spot, and then one goes all the way to the right, one goes all the way to the left. He's just so hard to see for hitters. I'm really curious if they make him a starter. I could see him blowing up if he becomes a reliever, I could see him being quick to the majors. If they make him a starter, though, I could see him really blowing up in value. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with him.
Yeah, he looked phenomenal this season. Every time he was very exciting to watch. I was
Yeah.
pumped every time he was on the mound. I'm gonna go next. For me, you took Alan Facundo. I'm gonna go with Emmanuel Tejada. Hopefully, a full season of him. He'll give us something exciting to see this season. And I'm also gonna mention Jackson Lovich. He looked absolutely amazing in the short stint that we got of him. Again, it was a short sample size, but he looked like he was ready for Hudson Valley.
I'm going to regret this choice, but I'm going to throw Caden Kent in there. I don't know. There's something I like about his swing, but every time I make one of these type of predictions, they come out stupid. So
But for me, Ruben Castillo is actually in the DSL. I think he's one of those. He's in like the Manny Cedeno type of role where the power's developing. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of kids that are sophomores in high school going into the junior year of high school, or if they were stateside. So I think having a full season within the Yankee organization, like them working with him, I think that next year he's going to he's going to push forward a lot more, and hopefully, he makes it. I don't think he'll make it to the FCL, but I think he'll definitely be there after next season. But I think next year will be a turnaround year for him. You see a lot more hits. The average is going to come up. The strikeouts are going to come down. He's going to show a little bit more pop in his swing. And I like his defense from what I've seen, but I think everything around him is going to take like a full stride, two strides forward.
Did Nick go? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, I went first, man. I said
Okay.
Francisco Villarreal
All
and
right.
Angel Benitez.
If you all had to guess give me one player who's going to debut in 26 not named Spencer Jones.
I'm gonna go George Lombard Jr.
Mm.
No, I was going to
Yeah.
ask you: are we talking about coming straight, making the open day roster, or just debuting
Oh, you
Making
said
a
opening
debut.
day.
No. I said debut.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go
debut?
George Lombard Jr. I'm gonna say that Anthony Volpe is so bad that Aaron gets on there and starts making phone calls, and we get some George Lombard Jr.
Listen, we haven't really talked about him this episode, but I think if we want to talk about breakouts, I could see Lombard breaking out. He is showing some really positive signs towards the end of the year in Double A with increased contact and increased power. The strikeouts were up weirdly enough for him. So I didn't love that, but if he pulls those things together that he was showing and makes it consistent power and contact threat, he could definitely get off to a hot start in Double A. And yeah, if the opportunity arises, whether it's because Volpe is underperforming again or if there's an injury, yeah, I don't see why not. I'm gonna go. I'll go with a bit more of a off the beaten path choice. I'm gonna go Brendan Jones. The Yankees outfield picture is very much up in the air for next year. It's really just Judge, who heck, he might, potentially be a first baseman depending on what's going on with his elbow. But Bellinger's a free agent, Grisham's a free agent. I expect one of them back. Jason's seems like more of a left fielder. Maybe that he gets traded. Who knows? If there becomes a
Blasphemy.
time, I'm just, it's. I'm not saying I want him
Blasphemy.
traded. It just could happen. But At some point in the year, if there's injuries, Brendan Jones provides a really good glove. He can steal you a lot of bags. He does a pretty good job making contact. I don't know how well he'll do, but I could see him being someone when that time arises, being someone they can trust with the glove and the speed on the base pass, and someone who can get on base with walks, and maybe he's able to tap into that pull side power at Yankee Stadium, get some home runs, and he can start his Brett Gardner arc because that's my comp for him. So, the path is there.
My safe choice is Elmer Rodriguez Cruz makes at least one start for the Yankees next year. And my guess that's going to make me look like an idiot is Brennan Davis.
Marcus, I was with you. I mean, pitching is so volatile. It's safe money to put down ERC debuting next season. I mean, Cole's not going to be back to at least halfway through the season. Schmidt's not going to be back at all. You don't know what Hey, Schlittler and Warren did really good, but the leagues adjust to you all the time, and maybe they come out the gates not doing well, or they go through a month where there's a big problem, or injuries again. So at some point, I expect to see ERC up in the majors. I expect to see LeGrand at some point in AAA next season and knocking on the door as well. So
Yeah.
that's ERC is the safest bet out of
Mhm.
everybody,
Easy.
not named Spencer Jones.
They've got a 4 out of 5 guys in the rotation on career high in innings, and Heal
Mhm.
injured this year. And I hope they make a deep October run, but that really is going to have be a factor next year if they do. So
And that's
all
why my
hands on
pick.
deck.
That's why my pick is Ben Hess.
Mhm. I want to up the ante though. I'm not saying this is definitely a bold take, and I'm saying it's maybe probably even less than 10% likelihood, but I'm keeping the door open that ERC breaks the opening day rotation. You know,
What?
it, it,
Which
it's
rotation?
bold.
Which
The
rotation?
MLB rotation.
The Yankees?
Yeah. Listen,
There's
it's a
no,
bold
there's
take, and
zero
like
percent chance, 0% chance.
I think it's a non-zero. Listen,
Barring an injury, barring an injury.
well, but that's where it gets into things is listen, you know that Garrett Cole isn't going to be back to start the year. Clark Schmidt definitely won't
I mean, you
be.
already have seven
So
starting pitchers.
well, you have Fried, you have Rodon, you have Schlittler, you have Warren, you have Heel, which how much do they trust
Hmm.
him? Who do
I
you
mean,
have after that?
he
First of
hasn't even
all,
been bad though. Why are we
Yeah.
Heel has
shitting on
been
Hill like he's been bad?
Heel has not
Yeah,
been
but
Heel has
don't
not been
forget
good.
he'll pitch the most of the innings last year, and all of a sudden he started on the IL this year.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I mean
So
that's definitely
if he
some of
goes
it.
back and he's
I mean, no,
go on,
that's
Aaron.
definitely part of it, and he just didn't look great. And if you saw Blake's quotes about him, from to Chris Kirschner or Brent Kuda, I can't remember which one, but they weren't very glowing. And I mean, the eye test, he did not. I know the ERA was decent, but he did not look great. He was not missing any bats. So yeah, I think there's this chance that if ERC, because he's gonna be in spring training, I mean, he's gonna be getting starts for them like Cam Schlittler was if he's doing really well and Luis Heel still doesn't look great, I don't see they're not going to start Alan Winans over him.
Oh my God.
Maybe Brendan Beck if he's still here, but if he, I don't know. ERC definitely has better upside with his stuff. So yeah, I mean, just based even without injuries, I think there's a small chance. And then if there is an injury, they pushed Warren into having to start this year because of injuries, and yeah, it could happen with ERC. So it's a bold take, but I'm not willing to throw out that he won't be on the opening day
I'm so
roster.
confused by this take though. Like, how are we making this take on a guy who won Rookie of the Year last year? I mean, regardless,
What take?
listen, the walks who
This isn't necessarily writing off Luis
you
Heel. It's
yeah,
just
but you
that
just said if he comes off looking like trash, when does he look like trash in the majors yet? I haven't seen that.
this season.
Outside of walks, he hasn't even been bad. He's throwing what to a low 3 ERA?
Yeah, but his ERA
There's no
is
yeah,
not
but
always the
there's no
perfect
yeah,
stat. He has
but
not missed. Yeah, you wanna. I mean, this is the most basic stat for me. Luis Heel, when he was dominating last year, he was pitching to a. Let me see. Last year he had a 26.8% K percentage, which is quite good. And this year it was 16.8.
yeah, it
He
doesn't
literally
matter.
dropped
And
10%.
his
That's
ERA was still better this year than it was last
his
year,
his
barring
FIP
a
was
smaller sample size.
4.63. His FIP was 4.63. I do not consider he was not I do not consider him to be a better
Because his
pitcher.
walk
And I
rate,
think if you ask
his walk rate was worse this year, right?
His walk rate was worse too. His walk rate was up another 1.5%.
So he
Yeah,
came
he had
back from
K he
injury
had
and
a
still
K
didn't give up as many runs. It's crazy. And he's throwing not as
he
hard.
got
Yeah,
Think
very
about that.
lucky. He got very
But he's
lucky. He
doo
gave
yeah,
doo.
up a
that
Come
that's
on.
lot of
that's
hard
one thing that
contact.
I think Nick and I we've had that conversation that even though he managed to walk hitters, he still managed to to get off the ropes. Um, and I saw that time and time
I
again.
mean, here's another, but then if you want to talk about, like hits, he gave up 104 hits in 151 innings. That's, two hits per every 3 innings. He gave up 47 hits in 57 innings. He was a lot more hittable. And when you're walking a lot of guys and giving up a lot of hits, listen, I'm not saying he can't bounce back, but I'm just saying if he looks like he did like he did this regular season into spring, maybe some question marks come up. It's if you look back at the Rookie of the Year winners throughout the 21st century, there's a lot of guys who had nice first seasons and then you really never heard too much of in the past. I hope that's not the case with Peel because I definitely like him when he's on, but I just, if he's looking like he did in the regular season where he's not missing bats and he's still walking a lot of guys, maybe he's not getting the same luck with things not leaving the park, then yeah, I think there's, like I said, it's a less than 10%, maybe even less than 5% possibility. I just think we're talking about bold, bold takes. I think it's a bold, I just wanted to get that bold take out there.
Sounds like a Bobby Malone take.
You'd be
Jesus.
surprised. I think there's more people that, and I know Yankee source I've talked to has the same, thought that, listen, it's like I said, no one would have thought Will Warren, or hell, no one thought Luis Gil would have been in the starting rotation the year he won his Rookie of the Year, and there he was. So that's all it is.
Right,
You
but
just don't know.
I can agree with you based on injury, but you're saying we're gonna bench the rookie of the year and a guy who hasn't even looked bad. To be fair, listen, I'm not gonna blame Garrett Cole, but he's the only dude that started in a World Series game that won. That's it. That's all you have to say. Now Cole should have had two, but at the end of the day, he's the only dude last year that started in a World Series game where the Yankees won. That's what I'm gonna say.
I mean, I'm just gonna list some names for you. Kyle Lewis, former Rookie of the Year winner, has done nothing. Michael Fulmer, former Rookie of the Year winner,
Oh
basically
God.
he beat Gary Sanchez out for it. Basically his career fell apart.
Because he got injured.
You know,
But we're talking injuries. I'm telling you, stop telling me injuries. I understand
Luis
that.
Gil got injured.
Yeah, but he's pitching
Giovanni
right now and he
Soto,
hasn't been
Chris
bad.
Coghlan, Neftali Feliz. I'm just saying,
I
like
mean,
it's
Naftali
you
Feliz
keep
was a
saying
beast in
rookie
the
of the
bullpen.
for a couple of years.
That
All my
I mean,
point is you
shoot.
keep saying rookie of the year, and I'm glad he deserved that award. But there's a lot of guys who won rookie of the year who, whose careers did not continue in that upward trajectory. That's all. That's the only point I'm trying to make there. You know, Past
I,
isn't always indicative of the future.
Moving on. Um, just keep in mind these players are returning from injury. You have Chase Hampton, Thatcher Hurd, Mac Estrada, and Brian Hendry, which has not been mentioned tonight. Very much looking forward to him. He has looked great while he's been on the mound. Um, Giving you guys some notable Rule 5 players at AAA, you have Spencer Jones, Chase Hampton, TJ Brumfield, Brendan Beck, Zach Messenger, Harrison Cohen, Eric Raiselman, and Leo Pastana. At Somerset, Brock Selvage, Jay Savina, Tyler Hardman, Luis Velasquez, Kevin Stevens, Will Bryan, Jeffrey Gilbert. I forgot to mention ERC, Danny Watson. At Hudson Valley, you have, well, now in Somerset, Manuel Palencia, Tyrone Eulis, another name. Uh, Aaron's boy, Justin Lang, Luis
That,
Serna,
that's cool. That's cooled down. That has cooled down.
Luis Serna, Willie Montero, Hans Montero, Alan Facundo, and Sean Herman.
Can we make Luis Serna my boy now?
Oh,
I'm a,
and
I'm a, I'm a.
by the way, and Jordan Mendoza and Angel Benitez as well.
So the most
What is
interesting
there?
name on that list for protection is Facundo. He's 22. He throws 100 miles an hour. He's left-handed. Does somebody take him and put him in the bullpen if you don't protect him?
Here's another thing in regards to that: the minor league Rule 5. I don't know exactly how that works, but the Yankees did lose a couple players to the minor league Rule 5 last year.
I'm saying, do you think someone would take Facundo and bring him to the big leagues for camp,
I
at least
I
use a
mean,
Rule 5 pick on him.
I don't know what the history of guys who were not even in high A getting picked and being stashed like that. I know guys have it's I mean Garrett
Look
I
at
mean
Luis
I know
Torres.
yeah, I mean that
Luis
was
Torres,
yeah, I was
he was in low, he was in low A ball as a
that's
catcher,
fair.
and
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a possibility. I don't think that, I would say it's a very small chance it happens. Um and I'm not even, if we're talking guys who teams might do that with, I could maybe even see Henry Lalane because he just I think has a little higher upside than Facundo. I think if someone's going to do that, it would probably be him from the system they do that with. I'm probably not stressing it too much, but I it definitely is, something interesting where does a team take that risk? Because
I think
also just, bullpen spots are so valuable nowadays in major leagues. Teams, heck, it's 8 bullpen spots, but teams are consistently using like twice that.
Right.
There's
So they
always
buy
guys.
in
So I
bulk.
just,
That's my point is you have to bring
but
in
also
four
can
to
it,
get one.
but then it's, can you basically give yourself only 7 for the year?
Well,
That's
I
the
mean,
risky part
because you,
about it.
you put them on the 40 if you take them. And I'm not advocating. I'm just throwing this out
No, they have to be on the
just
26.
theoretically.
yeah,
No, I, I no,
yeah,
I
they
get
have
what
to
you're
stay in the
saying,
big
but
leagues.
he has to make the
Oh,
team. You know what I mean?
yeah, I
Or
just,
they have to give him back.
I
I'm
just
just saying for
don't.
the purpose of the off season, they would have him.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting concept, and I mean, I'm sure it's something the Yankees are thinking about. Yeah, I would definitely lean that, if that's going to happen, it would be Lalane though. But
So the Yankees will have room to protect who they want. Right? I think they have a number of free agents, so there's going to be room on the 40-man roster. I'm interested in that name coming from where he is and seeing. I think that name was getting some buzz at the trade deadline, so I'm curious about that.
All right. Is there any other topics you guys want to touch on? Any last
Oh,
words?
yeah, I was going to ask, has the TJ Rumsfeld ship sailed now? He was one of my favorite guys in the minor leagues, and it seems like he will not get a shot at all. And that's that's someone I should have mentioned going back to the who would make their debut this year. That is my grab reaching for the stars type of thing is that he gets a shot at first base. Albeit like a couple days or something like that due to an injury. But I always hope that he would get a legit shot at playing in the big leagues for the Yankees. And I just don't think now it's not going to happen.
I mean, listen, they're going to need I think what we've seen with Ben Rice being a backup catcher and first base type. They're still going to need someone who can play first base. I don't see Paul Goldschmidt coming back. So, do they go for try and find a right-handed type like, like a Ty France to fill that role? Or do they give Rumfield a shot? It's definitely going to be something I'm very curious to see in the early days of I guess whenever the 40 man has to be done, which is I think usually sometime early November. So yeah, I would like to give him a shot. I think he could be a really nice backup first baseman. It's just the difficulty of him being another left-handed bat, which, I'm not sure how much, even though he's fairly split proof, platoon proof. Yeah, I'm just not sure how much the Yankees love that, especially considering how we've seen that having platoon options has really benefited the team down the stretch here. So I do hope he gets a shot, but I want him to get a shot somewhere if it's not with the Yankees. I would
I
love him with
think
the Nationals.
unfortunately, I think they told us how they felt about him. They didn't have a first baseman going into the winter last year. He had a good year at AAA and he can play defense, and they didn't protect him in the Rule 5 draft. Now, maybe the league told us how they felt too because he didn't get picked. But I feel like if he was going to find his pathway, it would have been last winter. But I'm with you. That guy deserves a shot someplace.
I actually thought he was going to be moved at the deadline, but was surprised he stuck around.
Listen, my Nationals have the second pick in the Rule 5 draft. If he's not protected, I would love for them to pick him up.
Mm-mm-mm. All right. Any last words, guys?
Yeah, I'm ready to get my heart broken again, so I'm on that Wandia siege and watch for January. I'm fired up for that.
Mm-mm-mm. All right,
Yeah,
guys.
go Yankees.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. On the way out, guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe if you haven't done so. Have a good night, everyone. Later, guys.
Good night.